It's part of the larger creative process. In fact, it's part of the first major step, which is the problem finding step in the creative process. And so just to review, problem finding, solution finding, and then solution executing are really the two main things we do in advertising. This is part of the problem finding step. This is the part before the creative brief where we actually say, okay, here's our strategy. Because in order to have a strategy, you need to know what the problem is. And so I think the SWOT analysis fits into the very, very, very first step in the problem finding step, because the SWOT analysis is an inventory. It's an initial inventory. You can do the SWOT analysis several times over, and I actually suggest that we do that because it really reminds us what's important. The SWOT analysis keeps us focused. And so the SWOT analysis, what is it? It's an inventory of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So if you notice one of the main things is it's the strengths and weaknesses is the top part, and the strengths and weaknesses tell us inside the company, inside the organization, what are we doing right? What do we do well naturally, and then what are we doing wrong, right? And so there are two ways you can use this. You can look at it and say, well, the strengths. Our strengths are these things that are inside of us. These are things that we can do. Now, all right, so the weaknesses are things inside of our company that we're not so good at. It doesn't mean things that we're not good at. It means that, it doesn't mean the things that we haven't been doing well at, because a lot of times a weakness can just be because of a lack of attention. So if say a weakness is customer service, but you have great customer service people, and all you have to do is pay attention to it and start making steps and apply some diligence, and you'll be able to solve that problem. That could actually become a strength. But if you don't have anybody, if you're not really interested in customer service, that's not how you're going to provide value mainly, then just let that be a weakness and focus on your strengths. And so the strengths and weaknesses are inside the company. On the outside of the company, you have opportunities and threats. And the opportunities are things where, it answers the question, okay, given the strengths that we have and the weaknesses that we have, what are our biggest opportunities out in the market? Opportunities. So, and then basically the T is also, it's threats. It's what are things out there that are going to be a threat to us? So given the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities, what are the threats for us achieving those opportunities? So let's look at this again. The strengths and weaknesses are things inside the company. You can do these two steps at pretty much the same time. You can write something over here and then write something over here and whatever, go back and forth. But these two things inform the opportunity. And so if you do these two things at the same time, then you do opportunity, and then you say, given the opportunities, then what are the threats? So you can do these things at the same time, but you don't do these at the same time, because these things are how you find yourself. They're the things that are inside your organization. The opportunities are things that are outside, that are good, that you feel are a natural fit to who you are. And then the threats are just the things that you need to know about before you can move forward. So one of the so the threats, the cool thing about the weaknesses is it just shows us, hey, focus on the strengths and on the awesome stuff you do. Don't worry about the weaknesses, because when you write down your weaknesses and you say, okay, I'm bad at this, then you can make a decision and say, look, I'm not going to let this hang over my head anymore. I'm going to make a decision about it. And I'm going to say, either I don't care about it, it's not an important weakness for me to deal with, or I'm going to turn it into a strength. Wow, let me make a plan to do that. But what you're doing is you're explicitly saying, my weaknesses, I'm either going to file them in I don't care about you, or I'm going to do something about you. But no longer is it just kind of hanging there as something that, oh, we should be better at that. Well, this tells you, this is where you make a decision and say, should we really be better at that? Just because, everybody says customer service is important, is that something we care about? Is that how we're going to reach our goals? It doesn't mean, by the way, it doesn't mean you're an unethical company. It doesn't mean you're mean to customers. It just means that you know your weakness and you're going to find other ways to provide value that make that weakness nullified. Okay, so another thing that people do is they don't strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Okay, and the same thing is true for threats. If you notice a threat out there, there may be some really good ways to deal with that threat, but first you have to know what it is, and that's why the SWOT analysis is so important. First, you have to write it down and say, okay, everybody, is this a weakness? Yes. Okay, good. Now we know. There's no mystery. We can deal with it. Okay, everybody, is this a threat? Yeah, it is. Okay, good. Let's deal with that. Let's position ourselves, and so that threat is nullified. All right. So that's why you need to go through this a few times, because something it's all right, here's our strength. Well, here's our weakness. Well, this is in real time. So today my strengths are these, my weaknesses are these, but once I make a decision about those weaknesses, those either get filed over here, or they're just like, look, this is going to stay here, and it's just going to kind of be a ongoing weakness. We just need to realize it, but we're not going to do anything about it. It's done, it's dealt with. But the next time you go through it, that thing the weakness that you filed over here is no longer a weakness, so that's not there anymore. So the same thing for, okay, then your opportunities adjust slightly. Now that your strengths and weaknesses are figured out, you have more clarity on that. You have more clarity on your opportunities. And then by virtue of having more clarity on your opportunities, you're also going to have more, and you're going to be able to identify the newer threats, and you're able to eliminate some of those threats. So for instance, if a threat is, well, we're kind of small in our market, we don't have a good reputation. Well, if that's a threat, and last time you did the SWOT analysis, you kind of dealt with that and said, okay, we're going to deal with that with advertising. We're going to solve that problem with advertising, and people are going to know who we are. Then you've dealt with that threat. And so, after 6 months or so, when your campaign's gone through and done its work, that may not be a threat today. So then you identify the next threat that's coming up, and you prioritize those threats. So that's why the SWOT analysis is useful. Here's the thing: the SWOT analysis needs to be interpreted. So you can't just list a bunch of strengths and then list a bunch of weaknesses and then opportunities and threats and then just leave a list there. A list doesn't tell you enough. It doesn't come to a conclusion. It means you've listed things, but you haven't actually thought about it. You haven't used your brain. You've used maybe some best practices. You've researched some stuff like you learned to in school. Anybody can do that. But what we need you to do as a strategist is we need you to actually make decisions about it. You might have maybe your strengths are price, quality, and service, or whatever, right? And everybody's is, right? You watch TV, quality, service, price. Those things cannot all be your strengths, and if you don't know why, we need to talk. But you need to, it's about choosing the one that's going to offer you the most value, that's going to create the biggest opportunities for you to reach your goals. And you choose the one that's the most important, and you go with that. And so and choosing is the end of this exercise. It's not just making a list, it's choosing. It's saying this is where we want to stand based on our thinking, based on our good logic and understanding of what the market needs, the opportunities and threats that are out there. Based on that, here's our conclusion. And you're going to find that when you do more research, say you do a SWOT analysis right at the beginning of your research process, and if you do that right at the beginning, before you do any research, you're going to have a better idea of where to look for research. You're going to have a better idea. You're going to waste less time on research, and you're going to spend more time on valuable areas of research. So, but say you do the SWOT analysis again after a week or after a couple of days of doing research, it's going to be refined. A couple of days later, it's going to be even more refined. And so the SWOT analysis comes before research, it comes during research, and then it comes at the end. And at the end is where you come up with your conclusions. You may not have good, solid, interesting conclusions right away, but you will if you do this a few times and think it through. And so don't be worried if you don't have anything interesting when you do your first SWOT analysis. You'll have it when you do your second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth, depending on what kind of problem you have, and how good your research is and how much time you spent on the SWOT. If you rush through the SWOT, don't expect it. Expect to do a lot of SWOT analyses. But the correct way to use it is do a SWOT at the beginning, take some time to research and do some thinking, and then wait until you've done some research and you feel, maybe you start getting to the point of confusion again, then go back to the SWOT and let it reorient you and let it help you process that research. Because the best creative ideas, the best solutions, the most apt solutions for the problem, the most perfectly fitting solutions come from further research, further refinement of what the problem is. With product design, with advertising, that's where the money is. That's where the real big effectiveness is. And that's where you have a Super Bowl ad that actually earns back the money that you spent on it.